Hello. Welcome. Today, I thought I would do a little bit of just relaxing gameplay while I talk a little bit about stories I have from work. Just as an introduction, my name is Jacob. I'm a 911 dispatcher. I won't say for what agency. I've been doing that since June of 2022. Coming up on 2 years now. But in those 2 years, I realized I'm starting to gain a lot of stories from that. And almost for myself even, I just wanted a way to document said stories. Maybe tell them in some way, get them in the air. Some, funny, some not so funny. I thought this would be a nice way to get it out there. Maybe make it somewhat entertaining while I play a little bit of a relaxing video game. The game I'm going to be playing today is called Long Drive. Or I apologize, The Long Drive, I believe it's called. Just a fun little game with no purpose, really, when you're playing it. And I think it'd be perfect just to do this mindlessly while I play. I will tell you and warn you, this game has some weird sound effects at times, so you might hear something that is strange. I'll try to keep that audio low, just stick to my voice mainly. But I look very forward to sharing some of that information while we get started playing here. I'll try to keep my focus on the talking, but I might drift off to the game on occasion. But with that being said, like I said, I've been a 911 dispatcher for 2 years now. I've taken multiple types of calls. I work for a decently sized agency. We cover about 82 different municipalities, or small little towns, if you will, within a county. And with that being said, I believe there are roughly 1,000 calls we take a day, probably 911 calls we take a day. There's two sides to the job, however. There is the dispatcher portion, and there is also the call taker portion. With my job, you start out at one and then get trained on the other later. I started out as a 911 call taker, taking 911 calls. I do now dispatching as well. I've been trained on both. So there's the side where you take the calls from the actual citizens, and then there is the side where you take the dispatcher portion of it, which is the transmitting the calls to the police officers and also doing the requests the police officers need, essentially handling the radio traffic, if you will, on the police side of things. That being said, I started off June 2022, and then from there I did a 7-week, I believe it was 7 week, I think it was 7 weeks, 7-week dispatcher academy, as it's called. The academy, I started off with 12 in my class. We lost one during the academy who did not make it through. He got another job that got him a little more pay, so it actually worked out well for him, in my opinion. And after the training, I believe 2 years later now, there are 4 of us left in the department. So it is a job, unfortunately, with a high turnover rate, but it is a job that asks for a lot of you. Different things in different ways, emotionally, physically. At this time, we are considered a short-staffed crew, which I'm sure every job in the world has that feeling as well, and is nothing special for sure. The side of our business, or the department, our side of the room, if you will, the communications bureau. We are in a room. If you come in, you see multiple TVs around, usually with the news on or something else. The structure of it is there are 2 shifts. There is a platoon and a C platoon. We do not have the staffing for a B platoon, if you will, so no afternoon shift, just a morning and a night shift. Our shifts are 12 hours, so 6:30 to 6:30. I started off on the day shift. Now I am on the night shift, so my hours now are 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., and then day shift will be 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. We relieve each other. 12-hour shifts. We have mandatory overtime, so we work a total of 8 extra hours a week, I believe. I think I'm thinking that correctly. I believe there's 8 hours of overtime mandatory to us each week. So we work 48 hours a week based on that. And that unfortunately does play a huge part in what I believe is the turnover rate for us. That being said, I do enjoy the job. The job has given me a lot of things that I didn't realize I would call a skill, even from the situation of talking to people during stressful situations to the act of handling a radio and learning how to manage radio traffic as well. So lots of different things at the end of the day. Sorry, I'm trying to pour this water in here, and it's not going for me. I thought I could do that. Maybe I can't. Oh. There we go. I did what I wanted. Okay. When I started my job, like I said, I was a call taker strictly. The first night I worked, I'll never forget my first call, if you will. You start off with even after the 7-week academy, you go with a trainer who trains you for anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, I believe, is the number. Depending on what it is. Some people take longer, some people take just that 8 weeks, depends, because, sometimes we do hire experienced dispatchers who need less time. Sometimes you hire people who know nothing at all, and you have to teach them. Obviously, I've always been told that dispatching is probably the hardest entry-level job to ever exist. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's what they tell us. So, I have no room to argue. I will say it's difficult at times, but again, still rewarding in its own way. Say what you will, we get treated pretty well for the most part, I would say. I think when people hear it, they commend you on the job, whatever it might be, that they can't do it. Say what they will. Again, people are always very nice about it. I can say that. I don't think it's the hardest job in the world as far as physical side of things go. You do, you're inside an air-conditioned place or heated place for 12 hours a day, and that part of it is not too bad. You're not getting drug out too hard, at least. But for me, I finished my training, but during my training, some of the calls, I believe I had a call where a guy was shot in the butt in particular, and I remember thinking, wow, what a way to start off my career here, a guy getting shot in the butt. The term shooting gets thrown around a lot, but I probably have fielded many calls, both on the radio and dispatch, involving a shooting, so to speak, again, and a shooting being not necessarily a mass shooting, but a shooting being just a case where someone actually got shot. One person got shot. That is a shooting. Technically, suicides that were caused by gunshot wound. That is a shooting. At first, until it's ruled as a suicide. But we don't make that decision. The detective does. We are merely there to field the call, put it out, and let an officer go out there, and then those decisions get made later. So we're just the first step of the process, essentially. I believe in the state that I live, we are considered first responders. I'm not sure if every state considers them first responders. I actually don't believe so. So that's unfortunate because, if you're a first responder tag, just the little benefits of getting discounts on things, getting that respect you need, but, whatever you might find necessary. But unfortunately, not every state sees it that way, and that's just how it is. I believe that'll change over time, and hopefully the people get what they deserve in that situation. That being said, from the many calls I've taken, again, some sad, some not, I've had calls where people have been, had a call from a girl who was crying, very upset. She was in her car. She was next to a bridge, and at that point, she's threatening, a suicidal action, if you will, making those types of threats and such. But again, I never say I talked anyone down from anything, because I just, I don't think most people want to kill themselves, and those people who are willing to talk, in my opinion, never really wanted to kill themselves. I think there's a lot more to it than that. I think a lot of people do want to live, even those who are technically suicidal. Unfortunately, there are people who carry through with it, but I do think those who are willing to call in and talk about it usually aren't, which is, a good thing that people want to do that, being the first line and such. The way our dispatch center works is that we strictly dispatch for the police, but the 911 calls come in to us first. So if you do call in to our agency and you need fire or EMS, instead you are transferred to EMS after that. So, and essentially, the spiel is, our script, if you will, 911, we say our agency name, location of your emergency, we get a good address first, and then we ask if they need police, fire, or EMS. And if they classify EMS or fire, we transfer them to a separate agency, but stay on the line with them while they give their information to EMS and fire. And most of the time, police are going to respond with fire and EMS anyway, because usually the officers can get there a little quicker than EMS. And, sometimes an officer has to secure an area for EMS. So we stay on the line the entire time, but we allow the EMS and fire to do the interviewing they need in order to put in their call. I'm going to sleep on the game here. Hang on here. Apologize. Doing some stuff. Okay. That being said, so at times, if EMS is needed, we can get them on there with them. There's situations like car crashes or shootings even where we'll do our interviewing portion first, and then unless it's urgent and that person can get that person medical help right away, we'll ask them a few questions about the situation first. But if it is an urgent medical matter and we need them to have medical advice right away, then we will actually transfer that as quick as we can. Which they do. This particular agency does all the EMS and fire in the area, and they do a good job there. I can always say that without a fact, or as a fact, that they work very hard as well and are just as overwhelmed in their own ways. They don't field as many calls as we do because, again, us being the first line of the calls makes a difference. So they don't have to wean out as much as we do. I do get a lot of, calls from, kids playing on the phone, adults who are what we would call is classified as EDP. That's where our agency does, which means an emotionally disturbed person. Anyone that might have any type of mental illness that is causing them to have an effect where they are perhaps pushing to the extreme of some things. Sometimes, it's the case of like schizophrenia where people see people who aren't there. I mean, we're still going to send an officer out there, but even as time has gone on and with experience with this job, we've learned how to actually you get really good at learning the difference between a person who is EDP and who's not. And you don't get every single one right, but there is something to it, and you learn the patterns of a lot of people. And that's something I did not expect. And pardon me, I'm just peeing in the game. Don't mind me. This game has some gross things going on, but I do like it because it's relaxing. But we have a classification of nonviolent EDPs, which, people who might be, who show no harm to anyone necessarily. Maybe, at that time, they're just kind of seem like they're not seeing what is actually reality there. We have violent EDPs, though, for people who maybe because of a mental illness are now posing a physical threat to someone else. A lot of times you'll see this in teenagers who perhaps have some behavioral disorder of some sort and are at a point where they are a physical threat to others. And that's the case. We classify that. The way our system works with our officers is all officers ride as usually one officer per car. So some calls are going to be a 2-car call, and some calls are going to be a 1-car call, depending what it is. But EDP and violent EDP is something that both require 2 cars to send. So you'll send 2 police officers to those calls. And our agency in particular, every officer is trained to handle any type of critical mental incident. So that does help our system a lot when we have officers who are actually trained to handle people with behavioral or mental disorders that might pose an issue. More of de-escalating. Obviously, they're not there to treat anyone, but just to handle a form of de-escalation before medical staff can make it on to site. But yeah, that's all part of it. And excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm just playing my game here. Sorry, I keep getting distracted here. But yes, the whole idea of sending 2 officers on some calls is just more of as a threat poses, and a lot of times more than 2 officers will go depending on the situation. If it's a shooting, obviously, by default, you send 2 officers, but more are going to go just because that's just how the system's going to go. I mean, if an officer is on their radio and they hear a shooting, they're going to go. I mean, that's just kind of the gist of it. Whatever it might be. As far as some of the calls I've taken, I mean, I've had some ridiculous. I've definitely talked to some people, again, that fall under that EDP classification. We had this girl lady who called in, I should say. She was an older lady who would call in, but she kept accusing us of, that she said that, I'm trying to put this in words that seem appropriate, but in a sense, she just kept saying that we were making threats of using the bathroom on her, I guess I would say, which never was the case. And then she would make calls at us threatening to use the bathroom on us and then telling us to do the same to her. And it was a constant call for her. And I believe she actually did end up getting arrested at some point for causing a disturbance. She was, again, someone who was, in my opinion, not exactly all correct, all where they wanted to be in a mental capacity, but she went into some place, caused a disturbance, and somehow she caused some property damage, I believe, and she also shouted some, I believe they were racial slurs, if I remember correctly. Unfortunately for her, it was at the point where I believe she was institutionalized somewhere. So, so we haven't heard from her in a long time, but I hope she is getting the help she needs and feeling a little better. But that being said, that was more of the ones where you listen to and you're like, oh wow, that's something that is very weird and different than what I was expecting. But here it is. This is part of it, and that's okay. I'll take those calls over some of the sad ones. I'll always say the ultimate call that I think everyone has a call that they just won't forget. Unfortunately, mine was a mother who had walked in on her son, and he had committed suicide by hanging himself. He was a 25-year-old male, I believe. But she just called in, very hysterical and, again, understandably hysterical. But she was just screaming and letting it out, and, at this point I'm just trying to get the information I can. So once I finally figure out what's going on, that's that point where you're like, okay, as far as police business goes, I have the officers on the way, but I'm going to get the medical staff on there. At that point, even if he's gone, you want the medical staff to get on the line in case they do want to attempt CPR, and that way they can get the proper instruction to do so. Excuse me. But unfortunately, he was too far gone. But I always say that the scream of that woman, I think, is something that will live with me forever. I always compare it to, if you've ever seen the movie Midsummer, which is a Ari Aster movie. Same guy who made Hereditary, made Midsummer, but that way that movie starts off, and again, slight spoiler here, but the main character, she finds herself with her family dead because of a murder-suicide caused by her sister, and she has the scene at the beginning where she is just screaming, wailing even, and that was so realistic, and hearing that, that's exactly what I heard that day. That type of screaming of just, what else can you do than just scream? And unfortunate to have to hear something like that, but it is something that sticks with you, and I think overall, it makes it more of a reason to do it. Makes it feel like, the realities of the world are, again, very real, very unfortunate things happen, and that was just an unfortunate thing that I had to hear. But again, all about talking it through, and I have a good support system in my home life, and because of that, I'm able to get through stuff like that and carry on. Some dispatchers unfortunately don't get through that, but also understandably don't get through that, and find themselves not working the job anymore, and that's part of the emotional toll that it can take. Stuff like that. Some people have been on the phone. I've seen some veteran dispatchers who have literally heard people who did the deed of taking their own life right there on the phone, and were able to just take the next call like nothing happened. So different people are going to handle things differently, and people with more experience definitely show it in those times too. But yeah, like I said, that'll always be the call that sticks with me, I believe, and something that I don't think I'll ever have to worry about forgetting. That's for sure. So again, that's on a more depressing note, unfortunately, but sometimes you just have to you just move on to the next call, and you have to sit here, and at the end of the day, we get to go home and go play our video games, So that's what I do here, and then relax in that way. Any dispatcher who's been doing it for a while will tell you the advice they always give you is, leave the job at work. Leave the job at don't take it home with you, essentially. And I think that's a lot of jobs in this world, no matter what it might be. I don't believe in heroes, so to speak, or anything like that. I think a lot of people have our purpose in our world, and we all do it to the best of our ability. Everyone does a part that assists someone else who's doing something that's just as important, and that's just the case. That's just always going to be the case. But furthermore, standing by that being probably the call I'll never forget, like I said. Another, trying to think of any other situations that, to bring out, because, the stories come and go. I've heard so much stuff now. I'm just kind of talking of things as they come up in my head, which I probably should have wrote. I do have some written down that I just kind of had just to write them down, but I thought speaking them out would be better. And at some point, maybe I will just go through my list of things I've wrote down. I had a 17-year-old who was called in, and again, goes back to what I was saying, where I think most people want to live, but the 17-year-old was walking on the side of the highway. He was next to the bridge and just saying he didn't want to be alive anymore, and just in the calmest manner, and he was such a nice kid. I forgot his name even, which is unfortunate. But that just goes to show how many calls I take. I can't keep track of a lot of stuff. But it's for the best that I probably don't know his name, honestly. But he ended up not doing anything. But I remember that was when I first started, and that was just and when I was released to on my own, that was one of the first calls I took on my own as a new dispatcher. And I remember just being like, wow, what a. I remember just like, you can just feel your heart drop on some stuff like that. And now it's not as much, but again, I always try to do my best. And essentially, the way our system works is when you get the call, you enter in. It's essentially like it's called a CFS, a call for service, which is just like a little form you fill out with information going through, descriptions of what you need and stuff. And then you press a button, and that button, once you hit it, sends it to the radio dispatcher, who reads out basically what you've typed to the officers who are responding. And we actively are doing live updates at the same time, so the radio dispatcher's job is to keep an eye on that and give the live updates as they come in from the call taker. The call taker's job is still to send out something as fast and soon as possible. So that's what they'll be doing, and that's what they normally do. Let's see here. Get this taken care of here. Get my rust off. The idea is that there's supposed to be 7 radios, again due to short staffing. Sometimes there's less, but 7 radios where you're dispatching for more than 20 officers on a radio. It's a little chaotic. Definitely not the ideal system that they have right now. Hopefully one day we will be at that point. Fortunately, running a radio with 20 people when you're training does scare a lot of people away, and is one of the main reasons why our staffing goes as low as it does. It is difficult to do. I believe police officers do have a hard job to do. Unfortunately, they are also very ignorant to the job of a dispatcher. They do not speak into their walkies as clear as they should at times. They also talk over each other more than they should, and they do not pay as much attention as they should. I do believe some of them really do try, but I think it's harder to grasp that concept, that they don't really grasp it. And unfortunately, we suffer from it at times. But, I do know some of them seem to be trying their best, but unfortunately, it doesn't always pan out that way. And you as the dispatcher just have to be as patient as you can, because they will test it daily, and it is a common thing. And I think a lot of dispatchers would agree, but again, your job is to just roll with the punches and do what you can, and at the end of the day, keep everyone safe, and your officers and the citizens safe as you can. And that is sometimes hard to do, because both citizens and officers are not always the most cooperative in wanting to do that. I would say 90% of my job is me going, ma'am, or sir, get away from him. And, yeah, so, a lot of domestic situations, unfortunately. I've become numb to domestic situations, and a lot of times it's not even true domestic violence happening. It's just a group of people who, I would say more just kind of, a lot of people use the cops, calling the cops as like their weapon to get people away from them. So they'll call the cops and then they'll hang up. And so all we hear is a bunch of yelling. So we have to send someone anyway, because they decided that they were just going to use the police as their personal, hey, let's let them know that we're going to be, basically I'm going to show this person I'm calling the cops, and they're going to be too scared to say anything else after that. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that, and that's just the situation we're in, but again, patience is part of the job, and you just work through it and keep going. So sorry, I've been distracted by this game. Trying to get my truck started here. stop with my distractions now. What's it say? Hey, Jizzo? It does. Huh. What a name. But coming on 30 minutes on this video. I've given a couple stories here. Again, I always would like to tell more because I think there's a real opportunity for that. More or less just laying out my job basics. I am going to go through my list at some point and just tell all the stories I do have written down of things that I think really stuck with me as far as that goes. Fortunately, I've talked to more domestic situations than I would like to, and I've talked to more suicidal people than I would have liked to. And but comes with the territory, comes with the job. I'm very happy with my job. Obviously 12 hours of all that, dealing with the radio and dealing with the 911 calls coming in. Again, you do every call as good as you can, and you try to give everybody your undivided attention. And after 12 hours of that, you'll find yourself mentally exhausting. I've always said that, when you're driving home from this job after 12 hours of busy work, you just turn the radio off completely home on your way home and just drive in silence sometimes because of how loud the room is that you're in. It's just a constant buzz of people talking on 911 or talking over the radio. Constant radio traffic going back and forth, and you just it's kind of weird how much you still hear it even after it's not there. But no, that being said, maybe I'll actually get a truck running in one of these games, but this gameplay was just kind of passively, but I feel like I should get the truck running in this video in some way. Maybe I can do that. I don't know. But what did I do with my brush? Didn't I have a brush? I did. Let me try. Can I do like one side of this maybe? Oh, heck yeah. Let's just do one side maybe. Oh yeah, we're gonna run out of juice here, I think, though. Oh, this is all good here. Okay. There we go. We used all the brush. And then we can just throw this out in nature. But no, like I was saying, just a low humming the entire time you're in there because you have radio going on in your ear. You have a radio going on. There's loudspeakers. We have a specific radio channel for talking to other agencies, a specific radio channel for talking to the people who handle the fire and ambulance. So we do have a lot of constants just going on. Again, it comes with the job, part of the territory. Everyone does their job and does it well, in my opinion. I speak highly of my coworkers, more than they maybe would. At times, I always try to keep a positive environment. It's hard to do when you're stuck in a place with people all day, but 12 hours in one room with some of these people, and people do start to lose their minds, unfortunately. But again, just doing the job best we can. So. And this car's coming along, huh? Look at that, shiny. Looking good, looking good. Fill this up with water, maybe? Yeah, we'll do that. Actually, if we do it like this, that'd probably be better. But yeah, I'll always fill the questions. There's no question out of term for me, in my opinion. Like I said, nothing, I wouldn't even say traumatizes the word as it is. Stuff that sticks with me, but maybe it is traumatizing in some ways, some of the things I've had to hear. The unfortunate thing is when you don't see anything. The problem with the job, I think, is there's not a lot of closure. We don't really find out what happens after the call. And in the modern day, a lot of dispatch agencies are trying to do better at not doing that, and not leaving us in the dark, but it doesn't always pan out that way, unfortunately. And again, some agencies are trying their best to do that. It's harder, I think, to do that, but some places are actively trying to be better about it. Excuse me. But we'll see. We'll see. But a lot of times, the call-ins and we hear nothing else about it ever again. I'll actively never. Speaking of things that stick with me and what I think is just absolutely wild is, I took a call for a 5-year-old. I believe it was a 5-year-old girl who suddenly had some type of thing going on where CPR was needed. But from what I understood, the last part of the call, I thought that she was going to make it through. But then, the EMS, one of the EMS supervisors who runs their dispatch center, called over to speak to the dispatcher who was on that call, which was me. I was the call taker at the time, just to check in and see if we were okay, which, again, very kind. But, I went back through and read the notes, and it turns out the little girl had passed away, unfortunately. And that was a case where it's like, man, it would have been nice to probably not have closure on that one and just assume that she was okay. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. But, so now instead of me thinking that all was well, I found out a very horrible truth. Again, you learn through experience. I've learned to navigate those said truths, those said problems. I try to keep an upbeat spirit as much as possible. Again, I hope I do not sound crazy saying these things in the tone that I am, but you do become numb, and I am a little bit on the numb side, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, I'm not sure. I think I just know how to persevere and get through things as needed, and this job has definitely taught me that. So, that being said, I think I've said that being said too much. I keep saying that. I think it's my tick. That being said is my tick right now. I can't stop saying it for some reason. So if I keep saying that, I'm sorry. So yeah, you know what? I think I can end it here. This has been a pretty decently long video. I never really have done anything like that, so maybe I'll tell more stories about it. Hopefully I can think of more the crazier, funnier ones that aren't, or at least just the insane ones, but perhaps I'll do less depressing ones. And I think I got a good chunk of some of the more depressing ones out of the way now. Well, there's probably more, but maybe I'll try to think of ones that are a little less upsetting, maybe, and work on that instead. But no, I appreciate it. We got our truck all green and nice. Let's at least start it up for the video. Get in the seat here. Take off the handbrake. Look at that. We got a working vehicle. It's very green. Turn it off and we can step out. Take a look at this butte. Wow, there it is. Check out that engine. Wow. That being said, I appreciate it if you did watch it. If anyone likes these stories or wants to hear more about being a dispatcher, has questions, feel free to ask. Nothing's off the table for me. I'm very willing to answer any questions that I'm allowed to answer, I guess. I don't want to give any personal information or anything away, but yeah, thank you so much. And you guys have a great night or a great day. God bless. Take care. So long.